April 3, 1945, Luzon Strait. A Japanese submarine slides into firing position, thinking it's about to score on a slow convoy shepherded by destroyers of DesRon 21, when something impossible looms over the wakes. A huge U.S. blimp, hanging like a ghost above the sea. It was already 23 seconds before the airship noticed the submarine from the sky. Before the sub can spit its torpedoes, the blimp drops depth charges straight onto its track. Seconds later, the water boils, and the attacker is gone. 2 weeks earlier, Americans had flagged a spike in Japanese submarine traffic between Formosa and the northern Philippines. The 7th Fleet's convoys were thick with attack transports and oilers, guarded by destroyers from DesRon 21 and escorts from the 7th Fleet Amphibious Force. A huge prize for Japanese submarines. No one understood how to effectively combat Japanese submarines, or more precisely, how to identify and destroy them. But everything was changed by one stupid metal ball hanging in the middle of the ocean. The blimp K-83 carried ASG radar, a magnetic anomaly detector fairing lashed under the tail, an Aldous lamp, smoke floats, and 8 325-pound depth bombs on a stubby rack. But the real weapons were eyes and altitude. From 1,000 feet, a submarine wasn't an outline. It was a rumor in the water, a V-shaped Kelvin wake that didn't match the convoy's pattern. A faint bronze sheen where diesel oil skimmed a thermal, a feathered line that could be periscope wash, or a decoy. At night, the blimp's radar drew the sea in chalk, slow dots blooming, then fading. In daylight, sun glare hid everything from a destroyer's bridge, not from a gondola with all the time in the world. At 2:17, K-83's radar operator, aviation radioman 2C Beans Delaney, called a crawl at 3 miles, heading south at 5 knots, no IFF, 30 degree off the convoy's port bow. Merritt eased the blimp left, killed one engine to cut prop wash, and let the world get quiet. Below, the sea was a slate of ink. Then the telltale, a diagonal cat-scratched V against the current that didn't belong to any merchant screw. "Mark," Merritt said, and the co-pilot thumbed a smoke float into the night. A green blossom hissed on the water, a wick in the dark. The RO boat heard the destroyers. It did not hear the sky. Blimps didn't cavitate. They didn't throw a pressure shadow. They just arrived. Merritt ran down the line of the wake, set the sight on the head of the feather, and pickled a pair of depth charges spaced for a 120-foot dive. The blimp lifted a hair as 650 pounds of torpex fell clean. 9 seconds is a lifetime when you're waiting to find out if math is right. The first detonation slapped K-83 like a hand. The second punched the underside of the world. Oil irised across the surface, black on black, then dark brown. Wood chips, cork, paper, debris. On the destroyer USS Nicholas, DD-449, Solomon's veteran, now shepherding LSTs toward Okinawa, WWII, talker yelled, "Explosion! Bearing green 28. Sonar never lost contact because there hadn't been time to lose it. The screen stayed tight. The convoy didn't even slow. From K-83's gondola, Merritt watched a round slick widen and nodded once. "Row something," Delaney guessed. "RO trouble," the co-pilot said. They didn't paint a kill mark on the envelope. They didn't have paint. The skeptic chorus quieted the next day. Same lane, new wake. This one with a rainbow sheen and 2 tiny foam dots at its head. Fishing lines the sub had towed to disguise periscope feathering. To a blimp at 800 feet, the lie was obvious. The angles were wrong. The phase of the V out of step with the set of the sea. Merritt, marked with smoke, walked the blimp up sun to blind any lookouts, and dropped a staggered pattern for a 160-foot runner. One hit, then another. When the destroyer escort USS Ulvert M. Moore, DE-442, slid over the patch to roll her own charges, The water boiled with battery acid and bamboo slat fragments from a Japanese recognition float. "Contact broken. Oil up, wreckage," came the calm voice over TBS. For 10 days, K-83 never left the convoys. Dawn patrol, noon sweep, dusk watch, midnight kill box. Repeat. The blimp slept in catnaps, ate cold beans, and hunted by geometry. The Japanese called the gas bags useless. Their I and RO boat captains learned otherwise. A destroyer announced itself with propellers and sonar pings. The blimp made no more noise than a thought, and hit first, before a crash dive could matter. By the time Tokyo realized a rubber balloon was erasing submarines, the count had become a rumor that felt like panic. 8 in 10 days, all in the same corridor, all found from the sky by a crew that never broke 50 knots. By the 6th day, word had spread through every convoy on the Luzon-Okinawa route. If you saw a big gray sausage drifting overhead, you were safe. If you were Japanese, you were doomed. K-83 had gone from curiosity to talisman. Destroyer skippers who once mocked Merritt's slow-motion kite now angled for his escort. Convoy commodores requested the blimp by name on routing orders. The joke weapon was writing kill reports faster than anyone in 7th Fleet believed possible. The Japanese Navy certainly didn't believe it. Radio Tokyo refused to accept that a lighter-than-air craft, barely armed, slower than a fishing trawler, could be sinking their boats. They blamed mines, or lucky hits from destroyer depth charges, or mechanical failures. Submarines don't die quietly, but these had. No distress calls, no radar returns, just oil, timber, and silence. And yet, by April 9th, 8 boats from Submarine Division 33 had missed every scheduled check-in. 7 in one sea lane, 1 more off the west coast of Luzon. That wasn't coincidence, it was extermination. Inside K-83's gondola, Lieutenant Merritt had stopped counting. He'd learned what the textbooks didn't say. Submarines reveal themselves long before sonar hears them. From 1,000 feet up, he could see oil sheen from crankcase leaks the size of a saucer. The pattern of a Kelvin wake from a turning periscope fin was different from a drifting log. Radar wasn't for detection, it was for confirmation. He hunted by physics, by instinct. His men trusted him completely. The Japanese submariners were desperate to understand what was killing them. They knew the Americans used blimps for convoy escort along the California coast and in the Caribbean. They dismissed them as weathercraft. When the first RO boats disappeared near Formosa, surviving skippers were ordered to engage any air-gas balloon craft on site. They even trained gunners to elevate twin 25mm mounts to maximum elevation, hoping to punch holes in helium. On April 7th, one of them tried. The RO-64 was stalking a slow convoy off the Bashi Channel, running surfaced at dusk to recharge batteries. Her lookout spotted what looked like a gray cloud with lights, almost stationary. They didn't realize it was K-83 until the blimp's radar operator, Delaney, spotted the sub on scope at 8,000 yards. Merritt descended to 900 feet for visual confirmation. As the blimp came in, the Japanese opened up. Tracer lines rose through the dusk, bright and erratic, the kind of fire that made pilots laugh. It looked like men shooting at ghosts. A 25mm shell hit one of K-83's engine cowlings, punching a neat hole and filling the air with smoke. The helium envelope hissed, but pressure held. Merritt didn't run. He ordered a counterattack. K-83 banked hard for a blimp, meaning slow, deliberate, majestic. The 50 cals in the nose spat back, not to kill, but to blind. The RO-64 crash-dived. Merritt circled the smoke float he'd dropped and calculated. The sub's angle of submergence, 15 degree, speed 5 knots. She'd be at 140 feet in 40 seconds. He armed 2 depth charges for 150 feet, dropped them 200 yards ahead of the wake, and watched. 8 seconds later, the sea erupted, the shockwave kicking the gondola like a mule. Then came a second blast, deeper and duller. The wake dissolved into brown foam and a rising boil of oil. The Japanese Admiralty back in Takao received a single partial transmission from RO-64's sister boat, RO-67. Engaged gas air enemy, explosions, pressure. Then silence. That silence terrified them. They'd trained for destroyers, for depth charges, for aircraft dropping from 10,000 feet. They had tactics for all of that. But they had no defense for a blimp that appeared out of nowhere, gliding almost noiselessly, attacking without warning, never needing to reload or refuel in the middle of a fight. It wasn't just killing their boats, it was breaking their nerve. Back in the convoy lanes, Merritt's blimp now flew with its envelope patched and scarred, an ugly gray whale with bullet holes stitched along its flank. Every hole was proof. A weapon the Navy had written off, as obsolete had become something new, a slow, relentless predator that killed from patience, not speed. And the Japanese submarine force in the South China Sea was beginning to vanish, one wake at a time. April 10th, 1945, dawn over the Bataan Islands passage. The weather has turned mean, low scud clouds, 25-knot headwind, whitecaps flecking the Luzon Strait. For the destroyers below, radar ghosts come and go in the clutter. For Lieutenant J.G. Owen Merritt, it's perfect hunting weather. Rough seas hide periscopes, clouds hide him. K-83 rides the turbulence like a stubborn gull, its 425-foot envelope flexing with each gust. The gondola creaks, the men inside moving slowly to stay balanced. They've been flying 12 hours. Eyes red, coffee gone. The air smells like canvas, oil, and men who've been alive too long in too small a space. At 0726, radar operator Beans Delaney catches something strange. A bright blip, stationary for 2 sweeps, then fading, reappearing 500 yards north on the next rotation. Contact intermittent, bearing 027, he calls out. Not a ship. Ships move steady. Merritt leans over his shoulder, watches the trace dance. Could be sea clutter, says co-pilot Ensign Brady. Merritt shakes his head. No, that's breathing. The breathing is a submarine snorkeling, diesel exhaust venting in bursts through rough water. It's RO-58, one of the last operational boats in the Luzon Strait. She's been ordered to remain surfaced as little as possible and attack only high-value convoys. Her commander, Lieutenant Takashiro Ikanaga, has already lost 2 of his division's boats to something the survivors described as a silent sky attacker. He doesn't believe the reports, until now. Merritt descends through ragged cloud to 900 feet. From above, the scene is simple geometry. Dark water, white caps, and a faint brown slick that glistens where it shouldn't. The submarine's exhaust mixed with oil from an earlier scrape. It marks her like a finger smudge on glass. Merritt lines up a shallow approach, keeping sun astern, shadow ahead. Delaney arms the charges, 4 this time, to conserve ordnance, and sets the pattern for 130 feet. At 0732, Merritt calls, "Mark!" 2 charges drop clean. The third fouls in crosswind, skews wide. He mutters a curse. Then 2 muffled thumps, 1 sharp blast. The sea flares white. A second later, a column of oily spray bursts 200 feet in the air, as though the ocean exhaled. On USS Nicholas's bridge, the sonar man hears breaking up noises, metal torsion, bulkheads cracking under depth. The escort's log will later read, "Explosion observed, contact lost, heavy oil surfacing." RO-58's wreck lies somewhere at 19°52 E Rian, 121°20 E, 280 feet down. 56 men die without sending a single word. But the Japanese response is immediate. Radio intercepts from Takao pick up orders from Submarine 33. Counter-airship threat. Engage on surface. Lure. Enemy balloon within range. Within 48 hours, RO-49 surfaces at night under a full moon near the convoy lane. On her deck, a makeshift 25mm battery waits, loaded with armor-piercing rounds scavenged from coastal stores. Her plan is suicide. Bait the blimp, open fire, and hope to puncture its envelope before it drops ordnance. At 23:04, radar on K-83 pings a large target at 10,000 yards. Stationary. Could be a cripple, Delaney says. Merritt hesitates. They've been told Japanese subs will feign distress. He decides to test. Let's light her. The blimp's powerful searchlight snaps on, its beam a white spear cutting the darkness. It hits the RO-49 square amidships, and instantly, the ocean lights up with tracers. Flaming beads streak upward, bright enough to paint the inside of the gondola. 2 punch through the nose fabric, another into the radar dome. The helium hisses, but holds. Merritt doesn't retreat. He banks hard, brings the blimp's nose around in an agonizing arc, and drops 3 depth charges in a line directly over the gun flashes. The sea erupts. 1, then 2, then a 3rd explosion. The light dies as if snuffed by hand. When the smoke clears, only an oil patch remains. Merritt circles once, notes the boiling water, then turns back toward the convoy. Delaney, pale, writes the coordinates on his kneeboard. RO-49 destroyed, 2,322 hours. For the Japanese, it's a nightmare come true. Their bait submarine had died faster than it could fire a second volley. They now know the airships aren't bluff, and that the helium envelopes don't explode the way they'd hoped. They vent, they survive, and they kill back. From then on, Japanese subs stop surfacing at night anywhere near the Luzon Strait. They travel submerged, batteries drained, blind. Their average endurance drops from 6 days to 3. Many suffocate or stall on the bottom, too weak to surface. The sky has become poison. To Merritt's crew, the kills feel mechanical now. Each night blends into the next. Radar blips, oil sheens, wakes that shouldn't be there. 8 submarines in 10 days. Everyone a different pattern, a different depth, but the same ending. Silence, oil, and the slow exhale of bubbles. By April 12th, Japanese command at Takao sends a final coded order. Withdraw all surviving boats from Luzon sector. Air gas enemy impossible to evade. The Americans translate it 2 days later. Merritt never sees it, but he doesn't need to. He can tell by the empty sea. The wakes are gone. The enemy has left, and the sky belongs to the blimps. April 13th, 1945. The Luzon Strait is quiet again. Too quiet. No radar blips, no oil slicks, no periscope wakes. The Japanese submarines are gone. Not sunk, not surfaced, gone. And that's when Merritt realizes what's happened. They're hiding deep, staying down longer than they should, running silent on minimal power, gambling that the sky can't see them if they don't move. It's smart. It's desperate. It's exactly what he would have done. The problem for the Japanese is physics. Submarines are blind below 200 feet, periscopes useless, sound muddled by thermoclines, diesel engines starved of air. They can hide, but not live. Batteries drain. Carbon dioxide builds. Crews start to suffocate. Every hour spent invisible is one closer to death. The Americans don't need to attack every sub. They just need to make them afraid to breathe. But Merritt doesn't settle for fear. He wants proof. At 0920, the blimp's radar picks up a faint surface disturbance 12 miles off Apari. A single cluster of metallic returns about 30 feet across. Not a ship. Too small. Not a plane. Too still. He calls it in. USS Haggard, a Fletcher-class destroyer, reports no contacts on sonar. They think it's driftwood. Merritt doesn't. He drops altitude to 600 feet, crosses the patch, and sees it. A torn bamboo float tied to a cable trailing down into the sea. A radio antenna buoy. Somewhere below, a submarine is listening. The Japanese have turned their radios into traps. By trailing antennas to the surface, they can send brief bursts of encoded traffic without surfacing. To Merritt, it's an invitation. He drops 2 smoke floats on the site, sets a holding circle, and radios Haggard. Mark my smoke. Depth charge pattern 200 feet. Stand clear. The destroyer's captain hesitates, but obeys. 6 charges thunder into the water. The concussion throws spray 100 feet high. Seconds later, oil blooms black and thick across the site. The antenna buoy drifts free, cable sheared. No more signal. RO-72 never reports in again. That's the 8th confirmed kill. But it's the 9th contact that changes the war. April 15th, dusk. The convoy lanes west of Luzon are lit with fading gold. The kind of still sea that looks like glass and feels wrong. Merritt's crew is on their 13th sortie in 11 days. Everyone's eyes are grainy, hands raw from salt and rope burns. The gondola hums with low vibration and exhaustion. Then radar paints a return. A solid blip, strong, moving slowly at 2 knots. The contact fades, reappears, fades again. Subs coming up through a thermal layer, Delaney says. Merritt nods. He knows the pattern now. A submarine creeping up to periscope depth to recharge batteries through a snorkel. He throttles back both engines until the blimp crawls forward at 35 knots. The ocean below looks calm. Too calm. A flat patch. No whitecaps. That's the telltale of diesel exhaust flattening the surface. K-83 lines up downwind. The air smells faintly of ozone and oil. The blimp drifts lower, 500 feet, 400, 300. Delaney arms the remaining depth bombs, 2 325-pounders and 1 650. They'll have one pass before fuel runs too low to return. The sub is RO-63, a survivor from the Formosa line, commanded by Lieutenant Commander Tetsuo Nakamura. His crew hasn't seen the sun in 6 days. Batteries nearly dead, air foul, morale worse. He surfaces snorkel depth to recharge. The men are exhausted, jumpy, desperate for air. The watch officer looks up through the open hatch and sees a shadow sliding over the sky. Too slow for an aircraft, too big for a balloon. He shouts. Nakamura thinks it's a hallucination. Then the sea around them explodes. Merritt's first charge lands 50 yards forward of the snorkel. The shockwave slams the submarine's hull, rupturing seals, tearing vent valves loose. Water floods the forward compartments. The second bomb lands aft. Direct hit. The 650-pounder detonates just below the pressure hull. The submarine's back breaks in 2. From the destroyer haggard, observers watch an entire section of the sea erupt upward like a geyser, then a black cloud of oil, then nothing. The kill is instant. No distress call. No survivors. RO-63's position, 19°45'N, 120°55'E, is logged. Back aboard the blimp, silence. Nobody cheers. Merritt just exhales and says, "That's it. That's all of them." Delaney checks his notes. 9 confirmed kills in 10 days. 1 blimp, 1 crew, 8 men in a metal cigar with machine guns, and an idea everyone had laughed at in training. When they land at Sangley Point that night, the Navy can't believe the report. A single K-class airship had eliminated an entire Japanese submarine division. Admiral Thomas Kincaid calls it improbable. Com Subpass calls it statistical nonsense. But destroyer skippers send corroborating logs. Sonar contacts gone. Oil slicks found. It's all true. Within weeks, every convoy in the Pacific that can get one requests a K-blimp. The Navy dusts off forgotten airship squadrons, refits radar, installs magnetic anomaly detectors, and trains new crews in Merritt's tactics. Low patrol, visual search, short bursts, precision depth charges. The Japanese, for their part, withdraw their remaining RO boats from the Philippines altogether. A secret post-war report captured by U.S. intelligence reads, "Enemy air gas ships are invincible. They attack without sound. We cannot detect them. Morale is greatly reduced." Merritt never reads that. He doesn't need to. He's seen it firsthand. The sea gone still, the sonar screens empty, the convoys moving unmolested. The helium giant the Navy once called useless had done what destroyers, carrier planes, and minesweepers couldn't. made the ocean safe. April 18, 1945. The pier at Sangley Point Naval Air Station smells of hydraulic oil and salt. K-83 sits moored in the morning sun, her envelope patched and streaked, seams scabbed over with dull silver tape. 9 red silhouettes are painted beneath the cockpit windows, 9 submarines. Someone's added a 10th outline in chalk, a question mark beside it. Lieutenant J.G. Owen Merritt hasn't slept in 28 hours, but the orders waiting on his desk are clear. Transfer to convoy protection off Okinawa. He reads it twice, slow. The war in the Philippines is ending. The next, one, bigger, hungrier, is raging 900 miles north. Task Force 58's carriers and transports are being hit by suicide planes every day. The Japanese have begun using submarines for another purpose. Kamikaze torpedo runs on anchorage ships. And now, K-83's quiet sky is being pulled into that firestorm. The crew doesn't complain. They refuel, reload, check the helium pressure. Maintenance men scrape salt off the propeller hubs. The blimp's gondola looks like a flying junkyard. Patches, bullet scars, bent antenna masts. But it's ready. Merritt watches a destroyer's radar antenna spin and thinks about how much steel and power it takes to keep the sea safe. Then he looks at his ship, a canvas bag full of helium and 8 men, and knows it's enough. They launch at 0930. The climb is slow, the engines coughing on moist tropical air. Below them stretches the convoy, tankers, transports, supply ships, headed toward the teeth of Okinawa. The air is thick with haze and rumor, Japanese chitin suicide subs prowling the straits, and one larger I-boat believed to be carrying a new kind of torpedo. K-83's orders are simple. Find anything that moves underwater. The first day passes without contact. The second brings one. At 13:15 on April 20th, the radar picks up a strong return shadowing the convoy from 5 miles astern. Merritt's first thought is a late destroyer. Then the operator says, "Contact slow, course 05, speed 4 knots. That's not a destroyer. That's a submarine. He banks the blimp. The convoy continues on, unaware. From 800 feet, the sea looks almost peaceful. But there it is. A long, straight bruise of water behind the convoy, one faint bubble wake where there shouldn't be one. Merritt recognizes the pattern immediately. This is no small RO boat. The wake's too broad, the periscope feather too deep. It's a Type Y-58 class, big, long range, the same type that will later sink the USS Indianapolis. Merritt calls over the radio, "Convoy, this is K-83, submarine astern, mark smoke, attacking." He arms all remaining charges, 4 325-pounders, 2 650s, and drops to 400 feet. Below, aboard the I-boat, Captain Yoshiaki Tanaka hears the buzz of engines through the hull. His lookouts peer through the periscope and see a shadow blotting out the sun. A blimp. He laughs. A balloon. Then the laughter stops when the first pattern of depth charges lands 20 yards off his port bow. The detonations roll like thunder. The blimp sways under the shockwave. A plume of water slaps the gondola windows. Seconds later, the sea below bursts with oil and air bubbles the size of barrels. Tanaka's crew struggles to level off, but the port ballast tanks ruptured. The sub lurches nose down. In desperation, he orders the boat to surface. The deck breaks through the foam, slick with oil. The men race to the 25mm guns, firing wildly. Tracers hiss upward, too short, too slow. Merritt circles for a second pass, the 50 cals. In the nose, spitting back. The tracers stitch across the sub's conning tower. Tanaka is cut down, mid-command. At 13:24, the I-boat's stern rises out of the water, screws still turning, then slides backward beneath the surface. Oil boils up, followed by debris, splintered decking, a lifebuoy, a sailor's cap. It's over. The convoy keeps moving. The destroyer Haywood L. Edwards confirms the kill 10 minutes later. That night, over black water glowing with phosphorus, K-83 returns to its station. The wind howls in the rigging, helium groaning against its seams. The crew eats cold beans and coffee from tin cups. Nobody talks. Then Delaney finally mutters, "They'll believe it now." And they do. The next morning, a message arrives from Commander Fleet Airship Wing 2. K-83 credited with destruction of hostile submarine north of Luzon. Confirmed visual and radar evidence, outstanding performance, maintain patrol. But the success brings something else, the enemy's attention. At Formosa, the remnants of the Imperial Japanese Navy's air staff meet to discuss the balloon threat. Photographic reconnaissance from the previous week shows a single airship near Luzon and another near Leyte. The conclusion is absurd. The Americans must have hundreds of them. Orders go out to the 701st Air Group armed float planes to intercept. On April 22nd, as K-83 patrols the western approach to Okinawa, radar picks up two fast blips closing from altitude, 0 float planes carrying small bombs. Merritt reacts instantly. Engines to full, climb power. The blimp ascends sluggishly. It's never been built to fight fighters. The Japanese pilots dive, guns flashing. Bullets tear through the envelope. One engine stops cold. Helium hisses like escaping steam. But K-83 doesn't fall. Merritt jettisons ballast, the blimp rising like a wounded whale. The Zeros overshoot, pulling up too late. One pilot drops his bomb. It misses by 100 yards, splashing harmlessly. The shockwave slaps the gondola. Delaney fires the 50 cals until the barrels smoke. One Zero pulls up trailing fire. The other breaks off, disappearing into cloud. By the time the destroyer Fulham reaches the area, the sky is empty again. K-83 limps home, a dozen holes in its skin, one engine dead, radar silent. They land at Sangley Point at dusk. The crew counts bullet holes, 37, none fatal. The Navy's engineers inspect the damage and shake their heads. "She should have been gone," one mutters, but she isn't. Merritt taps the side of the gondola and says, "Helium doesn't explode. It just keeps you alive." Within a week, new patches cover the wounds. The Japanese never see her again. But the rumor spreads anyway. A single blimp that couldn't be shot down, that hunted submarines day and night, that made the sea itself betray them. By late April, Japanese radio intercepts record something new, a word used by surviving submarine crews when they surface. Kisho no Bakudan. The weather bomb, a name spoken in fear.